Hi, I'm Jennifer Chen, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the quietest person in the room holds all the cards. It's funny how life works. One day you're being ordered around by your entitled cousins, and the next, you're signing their termination papers. But let me start from the beginning. My Aunt Victoria was always the black sheep of our family, while her siblings chased traditional paths. Doctors, lawyers, accountants, she built a tech empire from scratch. Chen Innovations became a $2 billion company under her leadership, but you'd never guess it from her modest lifestyle. She wore simple clothes, drove a 10-year-old car, and lived in the same house she bought when she started the company. I was the only one who really knew her. While my cousins Marcus and Diana were busy attending elite private schools and bragging about their family connections, I spent my weekends at Aunt Victoria's house, learning to code on her old computer. Business isn't about fancy degrees, Jenny, she'd say, watching me debug my first program. It's about seeing what others miss. My parents died in a car accident when I was 12, and Aunt Victoria took me in. My other relatives whispered that it was out of guilt. She had been too busy building her empire to help her brother when he was struggling financially. But I knew better. Aunt Victoria saw something in me that others didn't. For 15 years, I worked alongside her, starting from the bottom. While Marcus and Diana partied through college, I was learning every aspect of Chen Innovations, from customer service to product development. My cousins mockingly called me Aunt Victoria's shadow. But I didn't care. I was learning things no business school could teach. Then came the diagnosis: pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Aunt Victoria faced it like she faced everything else, practically and without drama. "Jenny," she said one evening as we sat in her home office, "I need you to promise me something." "Anything," I replied, fighting back tears. "Don't let them know how smart you are." "Not until the right moment." She handed me a sealed envelope. "This contains everything you need, but timing is everything. You'll know when." I didn't understand then, but I would soon enough. Aunt Victoria passed away quietly in her sleep 3 months later. The funeral was a who's who of the tech industry, but my cousins managed to make it about themselves. Marcus gave a tearful speech about his beloved aunt, whom he barely visited in the past decade. Diana sobbed dramatically for the cameras, clutching her designer handbag. The real drama started at the will reading. The family gathered at Chen Innovations headquarters, my aunt's siblings, their spouses, Marcus, Diana, and me. Everyone expected the company to go to Marcus, the oldest male heir, with significant shares distributed among the family. After all, that's how things were usually done in our traditional Chinese family. The lawyer, Mr. Patterson, cleared his throat and began reading. The first few minutes were standard: small bequests to longtime employees, donations to charities. Then came the bombshell. "And to my niece, Jennifer Chen, I leave my controlling interest in Chen Innovations, comprising 70% of all voting shares. The remaining 30% to be distributed among current employees according to their years of service." The room erupted in chaos. "This is impossible," Marcus shouted, his face turning red. "She's just a junior employee. She doesn't even have an MBA." Diana's mascara ran as she cried, "We're the rightful heirs. She's just the poor relation Aunt Victoria took in out of pity." My Uncle James, their father, stood up shakily. "There must be some mistake. Victoria wouldn't leave everything to the help." Diana spat. Mr. Patterson remained calm. "The will is quite clear, and I assure you, your sister was of sound mind when she made these arrangements. Furthermore," he pulled out another document, "Ms. Jennifer Chen has been secretly serving as Deputy CEO for the past 2 years. All the paperwork is in order." I sat quietly, remembering Aunt Victoria's words about timing. This wasn't the moment. Not yet. The family meeting that followed was brutal. They gathered at Uncle James' mansion, the same one he'd bought with money borrowed from Aunt Victoria years ago. I was invited, but it was clear what my role was supposed to be. "Jenny, be a dear and serve the coffee," Aunt Helen, Marcus's mother, said with a sweet smile that didn't reach her eyes. "That's what you're good at, right? Serving others?" I played along, pouring coffee for everyone as they discussed options, as if I wasn't even there. "We need to contest the will," Uncle James declared. Victoria wasn't thinking clearly near the end. Obviously, Marcus sneered, not even looking at me as I refilled his cup. "Look at her, she doesn't have what it takes to run a billion-dollar company." She's not even dressed properly. He had a point about my clothes. I was wearing a simple blouse and slacks while they were all in designer outfits. What they didn't know was that I owned the building their favorite designer's flagship store was in. The board will never accept her, Diana added, checking her reflection in her phone. They need someone with proper education, proper connections. I continued serving coffee, watching them plan my downfall. They spent hours plotting legal challenges, board member contacts, media strategies. Not once did they actually address me directly. I was furniture to them, just like I've been all these years. Finally, Uncle James turned to me. Jenny, this can be easy or difficult. Sign over the shares to Marcus, and we'll give you a generous settlement. Enough to live comfortably. It's what's best for everyone. I looked at their expectant faces, the same people who had barely acknowledged my existence at family gatherings, who had mocked my close relationship with Aunt Victoria, who had called me the charity case behind my back. I'll think about it, I said softly, gathering the coffee cups. The board meeting is on Monday. I'll have my answer then. They smiled triumphantly, already celebrating their victory. Marcus even patted my head condescendingly. Good girl. I knew you'd see reason. As I left the mansion, I pulled out my phone and the envelope Aunt Victoria had given me. Inside were documents, passwords, and a letter. The time for hiding is over, she had written. Show them who you really are. I smiled as I sent a series of pre-prepared emails. Monday's board meeting would certainly be interesting. After all, what my dear cousins didn't know was that while they were busy being the public face of the family, I had spent 15 years becoming the backbone of Chen Innovations. Every major client contract had my name on it. Every successful product launched in the past 5 years had my code in it. Every key employee owed their position to my recommendations. They thought Monday's board meeting would be their triumph. They had no idea what was coming. Monday morning dawned bright and clear. I arrived at Chen Innovations headquarters at 6 a.m., 2 hours before the board meeting. The security guards nodded respectfully. They'd known who I really was for years. I heard Marcus and Diana had been calling board members all weekend, rallying support for their planned coup. Let them try. I changed into the outfit I prepared. Not the designer suits my cousins favored, but a perfectly tailored black dress that Aunt Victoria had given me for my last birthday. Power isn't about looking powerful, she'd said. It's about being powerful. At 7:45, I watched through my office window as Marcus and Diana arrived, both looking smug. They'd brought Uncle James and Aunt Helen too, probably for added pressure. They were all dressed like they were attending a fashion show rather than a board meeting. Time to greet the family, I whispered to myself, picking up the stack of folders I prepared. The boardroom was tense when I walked in. 12 board members sat around the massive table, with my family occupying one end. Marcus was already sitting in the CEO's chair, practicing his signature smirk. Jenny, Diana called out sweetly, be a dear and get us some coffee before you go. I smiled. Of course. But first, I pressed a button on the intercom. Sarah, please bring in the documents. My executive assistant, whom my cousins had always assumed was Aunt Victoria's, walked in with a cart of folders. I began distributing them personally to each board member. What's this? Marcus demanded, trying to snatch a folder from my hands. Patience, cousin, I said quietly, continuing my round. All will be clear in a moment. Once everyone had their folders, I walked to the head of the table. Marcus was still in the CEO's chair. You're in my seat, I said softly. He laughed. Come on, Jenny, we all know. Mr. Chen, I cut him off, my voice suddenly sharp. You are in my seat. Move. Something in my tone made him stand up, though he tried to play it off as humor. The board members were already reading their folders, and I could see their expressions changing. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I began. In those folders you'll find several things. First, detailed reports of every major decision made at Chen Innovations over the past 5 years. You'll notice my signature on 90% of them. Yes, those decisions you attributed to others were actually mine. Marcus tried to interrupt, but I continued. You'll also find documentation of certain interesting financial transactions. Marcus, would you like to explain to the board why $2 million of company funds were diverted to cover your gambling debts last year? His face went white. That's confidential. Diana, I turned to my cousin, who was frantically flipping through her folder. Perhaps you'd like to tell everyone about the fake consulting firm you set up to build a company for services never rendered. You can't prove, she stammered. Oh, but I can. Aunt Victoria and I documented everything. We let it slide, hoping you'd learn, grow up, become responsible. We were wrong. Uncle James stood up, his face purple with rage. Now see here. Sit down, Uncle, I said quietly. Your section is on page 12. The irregular loans, the misappropriated funds, the shell companies. Would you like me to continue? He collapsed into his chair. For years, I addressed the board. I worked quietly, learning every aspect of this company. While others took credit for my work, I let them. Because Aunt Victoria taught me that true power doesn't need recognition. It needs results. I clicked a remote, and the screen behind me lit up with charts. Under my direct management, though others took credit, our R&D department increased productivity by 200%. Our client retention rate rose to 98%. Our profit margins doubled. The board members were nodding now, many of them finally understanding why certain departments have mysteriously improved over the years. Now, I continued, we have a choice. You can support my cousin's attempted coup, in which case I'll be forced to release all this information to the media and proper authorities. Or, I pressed another button, and new documents appeared on the screen. Or we can move forward with the expansion plans I've spent the last year developing. 5 new tech centers, partnerships with leading AI research facilities, and a revolutionary product line that will put us years ahead of our competitors. The room was silent. I could see the board members exchanging glances, doing the math in their heads. Finally, Mr. Rodriguez, our longest-serving board member, spoke up. I moved to formally confirm Jennifer Chen as CEO of Chen Innovations, effective immediately. Seconded, came multiple voices. This is ridiculous, Marcus exploded. She's nothing. She's nobody. She's just the poor little orphan that. Mr. Chen, I cut him off, my voice ice cold. You're fired. Security is waiting outside to escort you from the building. Diana, you too. Your belongings have already been packed. You can't do this. Diana shrieked. We're family. I looked at her calmly. Family? Was I family when you made me serve coffee? Was I family when you mocked my clothes, my education, my dedication to Aunt Victoria? No, Diana. You made it very clear what you thought of me as family. Security entered the room, more guards that had known my real position for years. Uncle James, Aunt Helen. I turned to them. You have a choice. You can accept my leadership and keep your shares as silent partners, or you can join your children in unemployment. Decide now. They looked at each other, then at their screamy children being escorted out, and nodded meekly. As the chaos subsided, I addressed the board again. Now, shall we discuss those expansion plans? The next few hours were productive. By the end of the day, my position was secure, the expansion plans were approved, and a press release announcing the new leadership was circulating. That evening, I sat in Aunt Victoria's old office, my office now, looking at her picture. You taught me well, I whispered. Power isn't about shouting the loudest or wearing the most expensive clothes. It's about patience, knowledge, and timing. My phone was full of messages from family members suddenly remembering how much they'd always loved me. I ignored them all except one. From my aunt's old housekeeper, Maria, who'd been kind to me even when I was just the poor relation. You did good, Miss Jenny, her message read. Your aunt would be proud. I smiled, looking out over the city lights. The company would thrive under my leadership, not because I was born into privilege, but because I'd earned every step of my success. Marcus and Diana. Last I heard, they were trying to start their own company. Good luck to them. They'll finally have to learn what real work means. As for me, I keep Aunt Victoria's lessons close to heart. Success isn't about being seen as powerful. It's about being powerful. And sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one you should watch out for. After all, they might just own the room.